هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها زوجها ليسكن إليها.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد. In yesterday's lesson, we started to speak about the talaq as-sunni and talaq al-bid'i. To summarize, talaq as-sunni is the talaq that's issued in line with the sharia. So it's issued once when she is pure, she is not on her menses, and it's issued while the man has not been intimate with her during that period of purity. If those three conditions are fulfilled, then it's known as talaq sunni. But if one of those three conditions are not fulfilled, then it's called talaq bid'i, which is impermissible. It's an impermissible type of talaq, and a person who issues such a talaq is sinful. So if he issues a talaq more than once at a time, or he issues it to her while she's on her menses or postnatal cycle, or he issues it while she is pure, but he has been intimate with her during that period of purity, then he is sinful for issuing such a talaq. And even though he is sinful for issuing such a talaq, and this talaq is something which is impermissible, it still counts, as we mentioned. If he issues it more than 2 or 3 times, we said it counts as one. It counts as one according to the stronger opinion. And if he issues a talaq during her menses or postnatal bleeding, it counts as well. Okay, yesterday we began speaking about the 6th and final issue in this subchapter, which was Raj'ah. Raj'ah is to take back the wife after issuing a revocable divorce. Revocable divorce is the first or the second divorce. If a man issues the first or second divorce, he has the right to take his wife back as long as she is within the waiting period. And inshallah, towards the end of this lesson, we're going to ask some questions, bi'idhnillah al-kareem. From those questions is the different types of waiting periods, which we mentioned yesterday. So pay attention, inshallah, and get ready to answer those questions. So we spoke about the definition of Raj'ah, and then we said that it is something which is legislated by Qur'an, by Sunnah, and by consensus, that a man, he has the right to take back his wife during her waiting period. And then the final thing we discussed in yesterday's lesson was the wisdom behind it. We said the wisdom behind it is perhaps the man, he was hasty in issuing a divorce and he regrets it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him this opportunity to take back his wife and restore the marital relationship. So we continue on from there on now. Shurutuha, conditions. What are the conditions for a raj'ah to be valid? Tasihhu raj'atu bi shurutin wa hiya. The raj'ah, returning back or taking back the wife, is valid with certain conditions, and they are as follows. Number 1, أن يكون الطلاق دون العدد الذي يملكه الزوج. The number of divorces must not have exceeded that which the Sharia has set. If it is within the limit that the Sharia has given, then the raj'ah is allowed, which is وهو ثلاث تطليقات للحر واثنتان للعبد. 3 divorces in the case of a free man and 2 divorces in the case of a slave. If a slave is married, they've mentioned here that he has 2 divorces. He can issue 2 divorces, whereas the free man, he can issue 3 divorces. So that's the limit that they're talking about. It has to be below the limit. So we're saying it has to be, in the case of the free man, the first or the second. And in the case of the slave, they've mentioned here he has a maximum of 2. So he can revoke the first one. If he issues the second one, she is ba'in, according to this opinion. But pay attention, inshallah, we're going to clarify. فإن استوفى عدد الطلاق لا تحل له حتى تنكح زوجا غيره. So if the full number of divorces has been issued, the woman is not allowed for him. She is no longer lawful for him until she marries another husband. So once the 3rd divorce has been issued, he is not allowed to revoke it. Raj'ah does not apply. He can't get back with this woman unless she gets married to someone else, is intimate with that person. If he divorces, then she can return back to the former husband. So that's the first condition. So the point that we want to note here, this condition is clear, inshallah. We already mentioned that a Raj'ah is something which is applicable to the first and second divorce. As for the third divorce, then you can't return back the wife after you've issued the third divorce. But the point that we need to highlight here is they've mentioned a distinction between a free man and a slave. They said a free man has 3 divorces that he can issue, and a slave has 2 divorces. This is an issue of differing between the scholars. And the reason why they differed is because there is a narration reported by Ad-Daraqutni from Aisha radiallahu anha, who said the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, طلاق العبد اثنتان فلا تحل له حتى تنكح غيره. In this hadith it mentions that the talaq of a slave is 2. The slave, he has 2 divorces. And if he issues those 2, then he's not allowed to take her back until she marries another man. This hadith, however, is a hadith which is weak. It was narrated by Mudahir ibn Aslam. He's da'if, and his hadith is rejected. So this is not something which is authentic. And if the hadith is not authentic, then we remain upon the default that we do not make a distinction between a free man and a slave. Both have 3 divorces, and this is the stronger opinion, inshallah. This is the opinion of the Zahiriyya, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Shawkani al-Uthaymin, which is the minority opinion. But when it comes to determining what opinion is stronger, we don't look at number. Rather, we look at the evidences that are presented. And in this case, if the hadith is weak, then we can't base any hukum upon it. So we remain upon the evidences which are general. At-talaqu marratan, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Okay. The second condition they've mentioned here, أن تكون المطلقة مدخولا بها. The woman who is being divorced, in order for Raj'ah, returning or taking back the wife, to apply, this woman must be one whom the marriage has been consummated with. The marriage has to have been consummated with her. The man married her and he consummated the marriage. If he divorces the woman, then he has the right of Raj'ah. لأن الرجعة لا تكون إلا في العدة وغير المدخول بها لا عدة عليها. So the Raj'ah is only applicable during the iddah. Remember, we said Raj'ah is something which applies when the woman is in her waiting period. And this woman who has been married and no consummation occurred, she has no iddah. She has no iddah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا نَكَحْتُمُ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ طَلَّقْتُمُوهُنَّ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ فَمَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ عِدَّةٍ تَعْتَدُّونَهَا. O you who believe, when you marry believing women and then divorce them before you have touched them, as in you have been intimate with them, then there is no waiting period for you to count. So a woman who's married and the marriage has not been consummated, she has no iddah. This was one of the 6 categories that we mentioned yesterday. A woman who is married but no consummation occurred, she has no iddah. So if there is no iddah, then Raj'ah does not apply. There is no Raj'ah. طيب. As a benefit, since this woman does not have a waiting period, it's permissible for the man to divorce her even while she's menstruating. So imagine a man marries a woman. He has not been intimate with her. He can divorce her at any time. Whether she is pure or she's on her menstrual cycle, he can divorce her. And the divorce here is not considered to be divorce bid'i in this case, because she has no iddah. So that's the second condition. The third condition they've mentioned here is أن يكون الطلاق بغير عوض. The divorce must not be in exchange for any compensation. The divorce that's issued or the separation that's initiated with some sort of financial compensation, this is khul'. This is khul', which we discussed in one of the previous subchapters. So if it's khul', then there is no raj'ah. Khul', she is separate from the man. If he wishes to marry her, he has to be on new terms, a new marriage contract. So there's no raj'ah in the case where the separation is through khul'. That's what they're referring to when they say the divorce must not be in exchange for compensation.
لأن العوض في الطلاق
جُعِلَ لِتَفْتَدِي الْمَرْأَةُ نَفْسَهَا مِنَ الزَّوْجِ. Because the compensation that the woman gives is in order to free herself from the man. She is freeing herself from the man, and this is the khul' setup. وَلَا يَحْصُلُ لَهَا ذَلِكَ مَعَ الرَّجْعَةِ. And if that's initiated where she is given compensation back to the man in order to free herself, Raj'ah does not apply. فَلَا تَحِلُّ إِلَّا بِعَقْدٍ جَدِيدٍ بِرِضَاهَا. So he can't take her back. The only way he can take her back is through a new marriage contract, and she has to consent to it. There has to be wali, and there has to be all of the pillars that we spoke about and the conditions. Number 4, أن يكون النكاح صحيحا. From the conditions for the raj'ah to be valid is that the nikah must have been valid. The initial marriage between the two is one which is valid. فَلَا رَجْعَةَ إِذَا طَلَّقَ فِي نِكَاحٍ فَاسِدٍ. There is no raj'ah, there is no right of returning back and taking back the woman in the case where the marriage is invalid. Maybe he's married someone who is from his maharim, for example, or they have not fulfilled some of the conditions and pillars. So the nikah itself is invalid. If the nikah itself is invalid, if he issues a divorce in such an invalid contract, then there is no raj'ah. You have no right to raj'ah. فَإِذَا لَمْ يَصِحَ الزَّوَاجِ لَمْ يَصِحَ الطَّلَاقِ. If the marriage itself is not valid, then talaq is invalid. How can you divorce someone who is not legally married to you? لِأَنَّهُ فَرْعُهُ. Because divorce is something which extends from a valid marriage. وَإِذَا لَمْ يَصِحَ الطَّلَاقِ لَمْ تَصِحَ الرَّجْعَةِ. And if divorce is not valid, you can't divorce a woman in such a case, then how can Raj'ah be valid? Raj'ah extends from the divorce, and the divorce extends from a valid marriage. So you have to have a valid marriage in order to issue a divorce, and you have to have a valid divorce in order to exercise the right of Raj'ah. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5, أن تكون الرجعة في العدة. The revoking of the divorce must be done within the woman's waiting period. It has to be done within the woman's waiting period. And this is why we mentioned the different waiting periods. They vary depending on the woman, if she's pregnant, she's not pregnant. She sees her menstrual cycle, she doesn't see her menstrual cycle. Okay. It has to be within the waiting period. Based on the saying of Allah, لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ. And their husbands have more right to take them back in that, and in this period. أي في العدة, during the waiting period. طيب, as a benefit, when does the waiting period start? So we've been mentioning waiting periods, and we understand, inshallah, the different waiting periods. But when does the waiting period start in the case where a woman is issued a divorce? When a woman is issued a divorce, the waiting period starts immediately, there and then. However, in the case where a man issues a divorce while the wife is on her menstrual cycle. Remember, we mentioned menstrual cycle is a talaq bid'i. You're not meant to issue it. But if you do, it still counts. It still counts against you. And we discussed yesterday that if a man issues a divorce while the wife is on her menses, he has to take her back. Once you've taken her back, you have to keep her with you, imsak, you have to keep her with you until she comes off her menses. Once she comes off her menses, now you can issue the divorce if you wish. But this divorce that's going to be issued is going to be the second divorce. So the first divorce which you issued when she was on her menstrual cycle is counted as the first. You've taken her back. Now you can proceed with the second if you wish. So in the case where a person issues a divorce on her menses, the iddah starts from once she comes off her menses. So we're saying in the case of a woman who sees her menstrual cycle, how many menstrual cycles does she have to see in order for the waiting period to expire? She has 3 menstrual cycles, right? But if he's issued a divorce while she's on her menstrual cycle, that menstrual cycle does not count. The waiting period would be 3 menstrual cycles minus the initial menstrual cycle wherein the divorce was issued. Okay, so we're saying the iddah starts originally from the moment that the husband issues a divorce. However, in the case where he issues a divorce while she's on her menstrual cycle, then it doesn't start immediately. Rather, it starts from once she comes off. Once she comes off, that's when it starts. And then we calculate 3 menstrual cycles after that. That's when the iddah starts. When does the iddah end? We need to know when the iddah ends, because it's between the starting time of the iddah and the ending time of the iddah that the man has the right to exercise al-Raj'ah. So he needs to know when does the iddah start, when does the iddah end. The iddah ends once the woman has completed her third menstrual cycle. In the case of the woman who sees menstrual cycle, the iddah ends once she experiences the third menstrual cycle. Is that it? No, it's not it. The scholars, they differed. Does it end immediately once she becomes dry, once she becomes pure from her menstrual cycle? They differed. What's stronger is it ends once she takes the shower. A woman, once she comes off her menstrual cycle, she has to shower. She has to perform ghusl before she's allowed to pray, before she's allowed to be intimate with her husband. In the case of the waiting period, it ends once she's come off her menstrual cycle and had the ghusl. This is very important, yeah? And this is the opinion which most of the Sahaba held. As Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions Zad al-Ma'ad, this was the opinion of Abu Bakr, Uthman, Abu Musa, and most of the companions. He mentions 13 companions in total who held this opinion. And Ibn Qudama, he said, we don't know anyone who disagreed with that view. So it's considered a ijma', a silent consensus. Someone might ask, what's the guideline then for delaying the ghusl? What's the guideline for delaying the ghusl? How long can she delay? She's come off. Okay, you're saying she has an extended period between her coming off and performing ghusl. So she can delay it for as long as she wants. No, she's not allowed to delay the ghusl for as long as she wants. The guideline for this time period is the prayer time. If the prayer time is going to be missed, then she's sinful. She has to perform the ghusl before the prayer time expires. That's the dhabit in terms of how long can she delay the ghusl. Okay, another benefit we mentioned also from the iddah, in the case of a pregnant woman, her iddah period expires once she gives birth. What if she has however many children she has, but more than one? When does the iddah end? Does it end with delivering the first child or second child or the last child? Majority of the scholars, they mention that it ends with the last child that's delivered. So if the woman delivers one baby, the husband can still take her back between the different deliveries. He can take her back. As long as the last child does not come out fully, he can still take her back. Also, another benefit is that we said the husband can take the woman back as long as the iddah has not expired. In the case of a pregnant woman, her iddah ends once she's delivered the baby, fully delivered the baby. Once the baby is fully delivered, she is no longer the wife of this man. The talaq is now considered to be ba'in. She's separated from him. Can she get married? She's delivered the baby. Can she get married? Who's going to answer this question? Azhar, tfadal.
Naam, I believe she can get married. She can get. Is the question, can it be revoked?
No. It can't be revoked. Of course, it can't be revoked because the iddah has expired. The question is, can she get married to someone else now? She's separated from the original husband because her waiting period has finished. Can she get married to someone else?
Yeah.
Why do you say yeah? Isn't she going to be on her postnatal bleeding?
Allah Alam, I assumed so.
Yeah, that's the correct answer. وَأُولَاتُ الْأَحْمَالِ أَجَلُهُنَّ أَن يَضَعْنَ حَمْلَهُنَّ, as Allah said. The ones who are carrying a load, the pregnant women, their waiting period ends once they've laid down the burden, they've delivered. So once they've delivered, they are separate from the previous husband and they can get married to a new husband. If a new husband marries her, the marriage is valid, but he can't come close to her intimately until she comes off the postnatal cycle. The postnatal cycle, he has to refrain from coming to her intimately, but they can get married. There's no issue. Number 6, they've said أن تكون الرجعة منجزة. The raj'ah must be unconditional. فلا تصح معلقة. A conditional revoke is not something which is valid. كقوله إذا حصل كذا فقد راجعتك. For example, the husband says, if such and such happens, I'll take you back. I have taken you back. They've said here that this is not something which is valid. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala in Sharh Al-Mumti', he says there is no evidence for this. There's no evidence for saying that a conditional revocation, a conditional raj'ah is invalid. There's no evidence for this. Hence, it's valid. He says it's valid. You can say, if such and such, or if your daughter memorizes the Qur'an by the end of the week, I'm going to take you back. Maybe the reason for the divorce was because she was not looking after the children, maybe with homeschooling, or perhaps this is where the problems were arising. So he says, look, if by the end of the week, your daughter, your son has not finished the Qur'an, maybe he has like 2 or 3 pages left, and the wife maybe was being negligent, he's issued the divorce. He said, if he doesn't memorize, or if he memorizes the Quran by the end of the week, I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back. As an encouragement for her, and to remain in the relationship by working hard to make them memorize the Quran. So anyway, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says it's valid. The conditional type of revocation, just like the conditional type of divorce is valid, likewise it's valid here. There's no evidence to say that it's not valid. So in its place, we'll place a sixth condition. And this sixth condition is that the husband must intend, when taking his wife back, reconciliation. And he is doing so expecting that he will stay within the limits prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fulfill the obligations towards one another. If he feels that there's going to be reconciliation, there's going to be maslahah, and there's more good than harm, with this intention, yes, he can take her back. But if he doesn't feel like there's going to be a maslahah in taking her back, the harms for which he divorced her in the first place will still continue, or he doesn't even have the intention of reconciling with her, then he's not allowed to take her back. And the evidence for this is Surah Baqarah, ayah 230. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا يَتَرَاجَعَا إِن ظَنَّا أَن يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. If he divorces her, the revocable divorce, there is no blame upon them if they reconcile, provided that they believe they can maintain the limits of Allah. In dhanna, this is a condition. So based on this condition, this is from the conditions for the raj'ah to be valid, based on this part of the ayah. And likewise, the ayah that was mentioned, Baqarah 228, وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّينَ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. The husbands have more right to take them back during that period if they want reconciliation. And if the person takes her back, if the man takes the wife back without seeking reconciliation, but he just wants to harm her, then it's not valid. This raj'ah is not valid, it's not permissible, and he is going to be sinful with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah said, وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Do not hold them to cause them harm. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. And whoever does that, he has certainly wronged himself. So this is the sixth condition which we are mentioning in place of the condition that they've mentioned. So all in all, the sixth condition for the raj'ah to be valid. If one of these conditions are not fulfilled, then it's invalid. So the next part, بِمَا تَحْصُلُ الرَّجْعَةِ. How does a husband take his wife back? We know how to issue the divorce now, talaq sunni. We know what to avoid, the talaq bid'i. Now the issuance of divorce has been established. How do you take your wife back? That's what we're going to discuss here. They said here, تَحْصُلُ الرَّجْعَةُ بِاللَّفْظِ. The raj'ah is exercised through verbal declaration, by statements and phrases. That's the first way. كَقَوْلِهِ, such as him saying, رَاجَعْتُ امْرَأَتِي, I have taken my wife back. أو وَرَدَدْتُهَا, I have returned her. وَأَعَدْتُهَا, and I have reinstated her. وَأَمْسَكْتُهَا وَرَجَّعْتُهَا, I have kept her. Or other similar expressions. Any expression which indicates a man taking the wife back, whatever language it is, it doesn't have to be in Arabic. If what's understood from that is that he's taking the wife back, then he has taken the wife back. She goes back to being a wife as she was before the divorce was issued. And this was the definition that we mentioned. Remember the definition of Raj'ah, we said إعادة زوجته المطلقة طلاقا غير باع إلى ما كانت عليه قبل الطلاق. She goes back to being the wife that she was before the divorce was issued. This part, I don't think we mentioned it before, but when they said she goes back to being the same wife that she was before the divorce was issued, yeah, it goes back to the same terms. So if the terms before he divorced her was, I'm going to give you half of the mahar now, and then the next part of the mahar is going to be given to you sometime later, and that was the terms that they were on here. They gave half mahar, and he's going to be given the next half sometime later, and then he issues a divorce. If he takes her back, they go back to the same terms. It doesn't mean that the mahar khalas, he's taken her back now, the mahar that he's meant to be paying her is uplifted. No, she goes back to the same terms that she was with him upon before the divorce. The same conditions as well. If there was any additional conditions in the terms, like I'm not allowed to, you're not allowed to take me out from this country, or you can't prevent me from this and this. Remember those conditions that we said that are stipulated? If there were any conditions that were stipulated during the initial marriage contract, if he does a divorce and then he takes her back, they return back to the same contract, same conditions, same everything, same setup. That's basically what that means. Okay, so that's the first way of taking the wife back, through speech, by stating these type of expressions and sentences. The second way to take her back, وَتَحْصُلُ بِوَطْءِ الزَّوْجَةِ إِذَا نَوَى بِذَلِكَ رَجْعَتَهَا. إِذَا نَوَى بِذَلِكَ رَجْعَتَهَا. The second way is through action. So you can take her back through speech, and you can take her back through action. And through action, what we mean by this is intimacy. Intimacy. And this intimacy, it must be with intention of taking her back. So there's two types of intimacies. There's an intimacy where a man wants to just fulfill his desire from his wife, who he has divorced. If he fulfills his desire with the woman that he has divorced, and he is not intending to take her back through this action, it doesn't count as a raj'ah. In order for it to count as raj'ah, it must be action accompanied with intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. The person issued a divorce. Him being intimate with her without the intention of taking her back does not count as a raj'ah, according to the stronger opinion. There's an issue, it's an issue of differing, but the stronger opinion is that it has to be accompanied with intention, as they've mentioned here. إِذَا نَوَى بِذَلِكَ رَجْعَتَهَا. If he intends by that to take her back. If we adopt this opinion, and this is the stronger opinion, what's the hukum of a man being intimate with his wife without the intention of taking her back? This is the question that arises. So, they've said that it is forbidden for a man to have intimacy with a woman if he does not have the intention of taking her back. He is not allowed to be intimate with her. This is not permissible. It's not lawful for him to be intimate with his wife that he has divorced during her waiting period if he is being intimate with her without the intention of taking her back. This is causing her harm. And the scholars, they mention that it is desirable, it is recommended for a woman who has been given the divorce and she is in her waiting period to beautify herself around the house. To beautify herself around the house so that it leads and entices the man to be intimate with her in order for the raj'ah to take effect. The raj'ah where he has the intention to take effect. If he stays away from her despite her beautifying herself, this means that this man is adamant and he's serious and he doesn't have any intention of keeping her and he doesn't want to be with her. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's legislated that لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن ولا يخرجن, that when a person issues a divorce, the revocable divorce, the first and the second, when the woman is on her waiting period, she needs to remain in the same house, the marital house. They remain together. She takes the same ahkam as a normal wife, except what we've just mentioned here, the issue of divorce. the issue of intimacy. He can't be intimate with her if he doesn't intend to take her back. But she takes the same hukum generally in terms of he has to provide for her, he has to maintain her financially, shelter, clothing. He inherits if any of the two were to pass away. Naam. طيب. Another benefit on an important matter, is it a requirement to have witnesses for the Raj'ah? The man wants to take his wife back. Does he have to call people to witness that he has taken his wife back? The strong opinion is that this is something which is recommended and not obligatory. It's something which is recommended in both issuing the divorce and in taking the woman back. When a person issues a divorce, he should let people know. It's recommended for him to let the family know that he's issued the divorce if he intends to go through with the divorce. And likewise, if he's taking her back, he is recommended to have witnesses. He is recommended to have witnesses. And this is taken from the saying of Allah, Surah Talaq, Ayah 2, فَإِذَا بَلَغْنَا أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَأَشْهِدُوا ذَوَيْ عَدْلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when they reach the end of their waiting period, then either retain them in a fair manner or separate from them in a fair manner, and bring to witness 2 just men from among you. So bring 2 witnesses to witness in this ayah has been mentioned with regards to فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Usually when there's 2 things that are mentioned and then there's a condition that's mentioned after it, that condition is usually attached to the last thing that was mentioned, the closest thing that was mentioned. So if you look at the ayah, فَإِذَا بَلَغْنَا أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, retain them in a fair manner is the first thing. أَوْ فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, separate from them in a fair manner. That's the second thing. Then وَأَشْهِدُوا ذَوِي عَدْلٍ مِّنْكُمْ, bring to witness 2 just men from amongst you. That witnessing, does it go back to فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ or does it go back to فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ? The first or the second? It goes back to the closest thing. Usually it goes back to the closest thing, which is فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, when it comes to separation, meaning divorce. And by consensus, it's not obligatory to have witnesses when you are divorcing. When you are separating, it's not a condition by consensus, even though this is the nearest thing that's mentioned. So if the nearest thing that's mentioned where we're saying وَأَشْهِدُ, because someone might say وَأَشْهِدُ is a fi'l amr, so it's obligation. So if you say it's obligation, then we say, look, the closest thing that it's linked to, which is separation, there's a consensus that you don't have to have witnesses. So if that's the case, then the thing that it's linked to, which is further away from فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, and retain them, مِن بَابِ أَوْلَى, it goes without even saying that it's not obligatory, even more so. So we said taking the woman back happens in 2 ways. The 2 ways are verbally or physically with the intention. Physically, in intimacy with the intention. طيب. The final thing, من أحكام الطلاق الرجعي, some of the rulings related to the revocable type of divorce. Number 1, المطلقة طلاقا رجعيا زوجة ما دامت في العدة. The woman who has been given a revocable divorce, طلاق رجعي, she remains a wife as long as she is within her waiting period. As long as she is within her waiting period, she's a wife. He has to provide for her, he has to shelter her, clothe her. If he dies or she dies, they inherit from one another. She has all the entitlements of a wife. لها ما للزوجات من نفقة وكسوة ومسكن, as they've mentioned here. She has all the entitlements that a wife has, from being clothed, provision, shelter. وعليها ما عليهن من لزوم المسكن, and she also has to give back in terms of obeying the husband and remaining within the house. So it's not an issue of khalas, I divorce you, and then the woman packs her bags and goes to her mom's house. That's not how it works in the Sharia. She gets divorced, she remains a wife while she is in her waiting period. They remain in the same house and continue life like husband and wife. She has to fulfill the man in terms of the housework. looking after the children. Life goes on as normal. They can speak to each other like normal. They're still husband and wife. They're not strangers. They can be left alone together. They can be in seclusion together. He can touch her and so on. All of that is allowed. وَعَلَيْهِنَّ مَا عَلِمٍ مِنْ لُزُومِ الْمَسْكَنِ وَلَهَا أَن تَتَزَيَّنْ لَهُ. And she can beautify herself. We said this is actually recommended for her to beautify herself, so that it leads to him taking her back. وَيَخْلُو بِهَا. He can remain in seclusion with her. وَيَطَأُهَا. It's allowed for him to be intimate with her. But this intimacy, remember, it has to be with the intention of taking her back. With the intention of taking her back. If it's with the intention of just fulfilling his desires without the intention of taking her back, this is actually harming her. This is actually harming her. طيب. وَيَرِثُ كُلٌّ مِّنْهُمَا صَاحِبَهُ. And each one of them inherits from the other. That's the first thing. The first thing is the woman, during her waiting period, she's still a wife. Secondly, لَا يُشْتَرَطُ فِي الرَّجْعَةِ رِضَى الْمَرْأَةِ أَوْ وَلِيُّهَا. There is no consent needed from the wife nor her guardian with regards to the Raj'ah. The man can exercise Raj'ah and take back his wife whether she likes it or not, whether her wali likes it or not, because that's still the person's wife, that's still the man's wife. So he doesn't need to go and seek consent. And the woman shouldn't be emotional here and say, oh, you divorced me, you don't love me, I don't want to be with you. No. He has the right to take you back without you consenting to it. You remain a wife as long as you're within the waiting period. And this is based on the saying of Allah لقوله تعالى وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. And the husbands have more right to take them back in this period, yani the waiting period, if they intend reconciliation. Okay, that's the second condition, or the second hukum that we need to know. That you don't need to seek permission from no one to take your wife back. You can take her back without anyone's permission. It's not a new marriage contract. Number 3, ينتهي وقت الرجعة بانتهاء العدة. The period for a raj'ah, yani the right to exercise raj'ah, ends with the ending of the waiting period. And remember, there's different waiting periods, yeah? طيب. وتعتد بثلاث حيض. The iddah ends with the 3 periods, 3 menstrual cycles in the case of a woman who sees the menstrual cycle. فإذا طهرت الرجعية من الحيض الثالثة ولم يرتجعها زوجها بانت منه بينونة صغرى. If the woman who sees her menstrual cycle completes the 3rd menstrual cycle after being issued a divorce, and the husband has not taken her back yet, then she is separated from him. Which type of separation? بينونة صغرى. The minor type of separation where he is still allowed to marry her on a new contract. فَلَمْ تَحِلَّ لَهُ إِلَّا بِعَقْدٍ جَدِيدٍ. After the waiting period has expired, she is no longer halal for him unless they get married with a new contract. بِشُرُوطِهِ, fulfilling their conditions, مِنْ وَلِيٍّ وَشَاهِدَيْ عَدْلٍ, from having the guardian and the witnesses and the pillars that we spoke about. That's the 3rd ruling. The 4th, تعود الرجعية والبائن التي تزوجها زوجها على ما بقي لها من عدد الطلاق. The woman who has been taken back during the waiting period, as well as the woman who has not been taken back during the waiting period, but the husband remarries her. Both of these, if the husband takes them back, they go back to their husband according to the number of previous divorces that were issued. They are the same. So if a man issues a divorce, and this is the 1st divorce, and during the waiting period, he takes the wife back, okay, your wife is your wife. There's no need for consent. There's no need for new marriage. This is your wife. However, she is your wife minus 1 divorce. 1 divorce is counted against you. Okay, that's the first case. The second case, he's divorced her, waiting period has expired. He wants to take her back. Okay, you can't take her back because the waiting period expired. If you want her, you have to marry her again. New contract. Okay, he marries her, new contract. So she goes back, minus 1 divorce in both cases, whether he takes her back during the waiting period or he allows her to, allows the waiting period to expire. If he takes her back, she goes back with minus 1 divorce. He only has 2 left. That's what they're saying here. But there's a benefit here with regards to this. With regards to this, we need to understand that there are several scenarios. There are several scenarios. Okay, the first scenario is a man divorces his wife less than 3 times, and he takes her back either by revoking the divorce or remarrying her. In this case, according to all of the scholars, and this is the case that we've just explained now, she returns to him with whatever divorces that remain. So the divorces that he has issued prior, they still are counted against him. So she returns -1 if he issued 1. She returns -2 if he had issued 2. That's the first scenario. And that's the scenario that's mentioned in the book. Okay, the second scenario, he divorces her 3 times. If he divorces her 3 times, then she marries a new husband. The husband is intimate with her, they have a relationship, and it's a valid marriage. And then Allah, qaddar Allah, ma sha fa'al, they end up getting divorced. And then the first husband wishes to marry her. If he marries her again, she comes back to him with a fresh, new marital relationship, and he has 3 new divorces. He can issue 3 new divorces because he had issued 3 divorces already. She got married, she got divorced, she comes back to this original husband, he marries her on a new contract, and he has 3 divorces that he can issue. He can issue 3 divorces. This also is an issue of ijma'. So we've mentioned 2 scenarios. Both scenarios are issues of ijma'. 1 divorce, second divorce, you take her back, but she comes back with minus however many divorces you gave her. Second scenario, you've divorced her 3 times, she goes and gets married, someone else gets divorced, comes back with 3 new divorces that you can issue. Okay, the third scenario is where there is the dispute. The dispute is if he divorces her less than 3 times, and then her waiting periods end, so he's divorced her the first time, or he's divorced her the second time. He allows the waiting period to end, and then she goes and gets married to someone else, and then she gets divorced. After getting divorced from the second husband, if the first husband marries her, does she come back to him with minus however many divorces he issued prior, or does he get 3 new divorces that he can issue? This is an issue of differing. This is where they differ. The other 2 scenarios, is an issue of ijma'. In this particular mas'ala, the stronger opinion is that she comes back to him with however many previous divorces he issued. She doesn't come with a clean slate. She comes, and the divorces that he had issued, whether it's 1 or 2, before, still are there. They're still there. And this was the opinion held by some of the major companions, Umar, Ali, Ubay, Mu'adh, Imran, and many others. طيب. Okay, let's move on to the last mas'ala that they've mentioned. فَإِذَا اسْتَوْفَى مَا يَمْلِكُ مِنْ عَدَدِ الطَّلَاقِ فَطَلَّقَهَا ثَلَاثًا. If the husband, he divorces her 3 times, and he's exhausted all of the divorces that he had, حَرُمَتْ عَلَيْهِ, she becomes haram for him. وَبَانَتْ مِنْهُ بَيْنُونَةً كُبْرَى, and she becomes haram for him and separates from him a baynuna kubra, the major separation. Baynuna kubra, we explained. فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ حَتَّى يَطَأَهَا زَوْجٌ غَيْرُهُ بِنِكَاحٍ صَحِيحٍ. Baynuna kubra is where he's not allowed to take her back unless she gets married to someone else, and that person is intimate with her, and that is a legal marriage that they get married. She is involved in a legal marriage, not a nikah tahleel, where a man, he marries her with the intention of making her halal for her former husband. This type of nikah is not valid. And if she does get married, it doesn't take away this condition that she gets married. She has to get married to someone else again with a valid nikah. And not just marriage, but intimacy as well in that marriage. Intimacy in that marriage. طيب. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. Next lesson, we're going to move on to the 5th subchapter, which is Al-Ila, inshallah. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك الله بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
يتدارسون العلم في غدواتهم والذكر والقرآن في روحاتهم لا يألفون الخلق في عاداتهم في معزل عنهم وعن شطحاتهم وعن الغلو وعن بناء قباب